very well received. We had community folks come in to come see the exhibit. We had some students give a couple tours to community folks. So I'm really excited, really pleased, really grateful to Mario, to B, and Andres for bringing the exhibit, blessing our campus with this beautiful exhibit, and selfishly was trying to think of ways that we could bring folks together and to continue this work. So I'm also really grateful to my colleague and good friend Ernesto for also supporting, being such a great collaborator to create what we're doing here today. So with that, I wanted to open, I'll show it towards the end. It's actually a beautiful video land acknowledgement that my other friend and colleague Julio Alcala produced and directed. And so I'll show that towards the end when we get our appropriate connections, but I also wanted you to learn a little bit about where our university stands here at Calcine Channel Islands. For myself, I will say that writing about danza was really an endeavor of writing about what I wish I had in college, that I was hungry for, like trying to find something. There wasn't anything that really existed about the contemporary danza movement in the United States. So my work has really been about writing, thinking about what I wish I had, and that's kind of the place that I write from. And what writing about what my own lived experience, but also thinking about what others after me might be interested in learning about danza. So, okay, so I'm going to invite Isma to come on up.
I think that we have learned that we are all one, ¿verdad? No le hace if somebody prays to and says, "Oh, Mateo," no le hace if somebody says that it's Dios, no le hace, whichever it may be, ¿verdad? What we do know is that la sangre indígena runs through all of our blood, and that we have a responsibility to take care of this land, to honor the people whose land we are on, wherever it is that we are. And when we have issues with each other, that we try to work them out. There are so few of us, as you can see, that we need to work out the issues we have with each other, because solos no podemos hacer nada, pero juntos podemos cambiar el mundo. Entonces, pido a Dios, a las ánimas conquistadoras de los cuatro vientos, a nuestros antepasados, a todos los que vinieron antes de nosotros, that we continue to work towards bringing each other together with love, with affection, and with forgiveness. Aho metakis, Él es Dios.
Hello.
I first saw danza in San Diego many, many moons ago at the Centro Cultural de la Raza. And I thought to myself at that time, oh, está bonito, but we're in modern times, ¿verdad? Never knowing that I was going to be in danza. And I joined Los Mascarones, a theater group, and they were friends with Andres Segura Granados. And Andres was my teacher. He was my friend. He was my guide in many ways. And so I met him through the Festival de los Teatros Chicanos. And so él me curó de los riñones. I was in the hospital for 3 months at one time, and Andres me curó de los riñones. And I've never been sick from that. So then I went to Sacramento, because I used to move around a lot. Went to Sacramento and I started danza there. I met Mario again when he and B got married, and I went to pick them up from the airport, and we connected again. And so I stayed in Sacra, and in '84 I moved back down south to Santa Paula because I wanted my parents to know me as an adult, not a spoiled or a rebelde. And so I came and I brought danza. The first group that I brought to Santa Paula was Lázaro Arvizu. I brought him to Guadalupe Church in Santa Paula, and they danced for La Virgen de Guadalupe. We also used danza for a play that I was in, La Virgen de Guadalupe, La Aparición de la Virgen de Guadalupe. After that, I started a group. With Lazaro's help, I started a group in Santa Paula. That was in '84, okay? So I stayed in Santa Paula, and then in '90, I moved to Santa Maria, and I started a group in Santa Maria también. And the people continue doing danza. And so then I came back down south when my daughter was a teenager, and she was a rebellious teenager. So I needed my family's help. And so I came back south, and my dad was getting old and he went blind. And so I came back home. And I have been here in Santa Paula ever since, and once again started a danza group. There have been times when I've known how to llevar a group. There have been times when my old ways and Andres's ways have alienated people instead of bringing them closer. So it's been a mishmash, but at the same time, I do believe in danza very, very much, as sacred as it is, because it is sacred, because it is our life force. It is what gives us life to continue on in all the struggles of life. So that's...
Thank you. All right, so Wisma is an elder here in our community, and I call on her for a lot of things. So I'm really thankful that she's here. And so thank you. Do you want to go behind the
I was sort of thinking about, like, I have a few remarks and notes para tenerlo aquí. Pues también noche no me callo, just recognizing that I'm a visitor on this land, recognizing the chaneque of this place and the caretakers that are still here. Grateful to my breath and all the sacred elements that give us life and the opportunity to be here. Thankful for all of you for your attention and your presence today. So I want to recognize some of my heroes that are in the room as well. 31 years in danza and ceremonies, and looking up to folks like Mario and Jaime and Luzma and B and Andres and Jenny and other folks that I've been in ceremonies with over the years. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here. I want to talk a little bit about the anthology and talk a little bit about this book that we're working on, just to document that. So we've been working on it for a few years, and we first start with the premise that danza is a topic that is worthy of serious academic study. And danza has a long, long history in the United States, but not a lot has been published about it. It's been something that's been community-based. It's been vital to social and civic movements and across the country, but not a lot of people were documenting it. And we were noticing that, right? So what happened over time is that there was several of us who were danzantes that also happened to stay in school for a while. And we ended up getting graduate degrees, doctorates, joining the professoriate. And so we merged these worlds, our academic world and our danza world, and began to publish, to write, to present at conferences and so forth. So we were inspired. I want to speak for myself, perhaps others. We were inspired by, when we did our doctoral dissertations, for example, we were inspired by authors in Mexico who were documenting the danza movements over there. I can remember reading the book At the Sign of Midnight, for example. I remember reading the book Ponte a bailar tú que reinas, and thinking like, wow, this is cool, you know. I remember reading Mario Aguilar. We would go to the sessions, we know who they were. People were doing undergraduate theses, master's degrees about danza. And sometimes they were danzantes who were writing about Philadelphia, and they were writing about Michigan, and they were writing about Seattle, and we were at like conferences hearing about this stuff, and we paid attention. So over time we thought, like, you know what, these scholars, they present at the conferences and then they don't publish it. They don't publish their work. And so can we bring people together and publish a piece about danza? So I think my published book, 2014, is one of the first books about danza in the United States. Dr. Luna has a book coming out soon that follows up, and there's more on the way. And so we thought, like, let's do this. So we start with that first premise. The next, we thought this anthology. This anthology works on, it builds on the previous scholarship, but we're trying to support a new generation of scholars that are in different locations, different places in their career. So we wanted to make sure that we supported emerging scholars and new scholars, community scholars, and so forth. We were looking at danza through 4 different lenses. There's lots of different lenses that we could use. We started with 4 that we liked. The first is Jenny Luna's concept of danzactivism. The second one is my idea about palimpsest as a metaphor for understanding danza. The fourth is re-existence, and this idea that indigenous communities are producing amazing culture outside of the frameworks of colonial frameworks. And then the other idea of transnational flows. We recognize that danza, it moves transnationally. It moves across borders, across time and space, and we wanted to think about those flows of cultura. So we decided to make a call to different scholars to contribute to this anthology. And it was a very difficult selection process. We got over 30 submissions, and we couldn't fit them all in. We were excited about having 30 because even in the 30 we got, we knew that there was a bunch of other folks that didn't submit, like folks that we know that like they have good work. So we selected 16 chapters, and we know that we have enough for a second volume. If everything goes well, I'm not committing to a second volume, but we know that there's more to be done out there. Beautiful work on danza across the country. So we have a really, we try to look at a diversity of chapters in terms of discipline and fields, and also geographies as best we could. So we have chapters in this book that represent, and you'll hear today a little bit more, we represent oral histories, a look at ceremony, a look at how danza intersects with public education and powwows and intertribal relationships, danza and queer issues, danza and its journeys to other places like Minnesota and the Midwest, danza and calendar systems, and history of danza in places like the Imperial Valley or Dallas, Texas, and so forth. And danza as a form of health, wellness, and so on and so forth. So a diversity of topics. And as I mentioned, a diversity of geographies. We try to, go to different states. And we know that there's danza in other places that are not represented in the book, and we hope to expand the book. There's scholarship of danza in Washington State, in Colorado, in Nuevo Mexico, in Georgia, and other places. I just found out, like through social media, like 2 weeks ago, that there's an important danza circle in Memphis, Tennessee, and they're doing great stuff, right? And so, yeah, danza's everywhere. So we want to sort of document that. Some of the old circles are in Denver, in Albuquerque, and unfortunately we didn't have representation there, but we hope to reach out and document the histories in those places, and other places. So anyways, those are some opening remarks. I want to thank Jenny for her wonderful collaboration, for putting this together, all of the people who sponsored this gathering, the beautiful exhibit that's here, and for the Aguilar family to bring it here, all the authors and everybody who made today possible. So Jenny mentioned this earlier. We've been a part of other anthologies as authors. I've been a part of 2 or 3 other books, and the best experiences for me are when I can hear what the other authors in the book are writing about. It helps me think about what to write, and I can reference their work and create a community of scholars. I just finished a process where we looked at language revitalization across the hemisphere, and we had authors in Chile, in Peru, in Ecuador, in Mexico, in Guatemala, and Canada. So it was beautiful to listen to what was going on across the hemisphere of indigenous communities doing language revitalization. And I was a contributor to that, but it was beautiful. And we got together several times as authors. So this is an attempt to do that, to create community, to listen to each other, and continue to work on the book. As a side benefit, listening to you helps us write the introduction. So I'll be taking notes today.
Chapter or offering was about the world before danza, the world before we had this, a world where if you can imagine you're 9 years old and you don't know what true sexual love is because you're 9 years old. And that's how we danzantes were. We didn't know what danza was. We just saw Ballet Folklórico, we saw María Hernández, we saw and it's a really interesting story about the Príncipe Azteca albums, how they were controlled by the Mexicans, I remember, for the Olympics. So we as Chicanos were dying for all of this, and we wanted this, but we were so far away. And then in '74, it's already been brought up by Luz Tenaz. It was a conference between Tenaz, which was Teatros Nacionales en Aztlán, and Cleta UNAM, which was Congreso de la Experimental, something. And what they did was amazing. They got the Mexican Partido Socialista de Trabajadores to put up their whole crop for the next year to rent a toll train for us Chicanos to go from Mexicali to Mexico City. And if you can imagine 500 Chicano dancers, musicians, singers, partiers on a Mexican train, you can imagine how cosmic it was. That was the word for it, cosmic. Because for the first time we went down there as Chicanos, and some people would say, pues son cabachos, because we don't speak Spanish. And others would say, son pochos, porque no saben nada de su cultura. But yet we went open-hearted, with our open arms, to see what this was about. And so the great moment came when the opening festival in Popotla, for those of you from Mexico know, Popotla is where Hernán Cortés cried in the Noche Triste. And there's only a stick left with a bunch of concrete holding it up. But we saw danzantes there. And I had never seen danzantes. And then they went into the church and they did a mass in Zapoteco, the priest was Zapoteca, and the dancers were Andrés Segura. And for the first time I saw this conjunction of danza, Catholic, mass, music, everything. It was like everything you could want. It wasn't like we had seen in Aztlán, like, we're warriors, Mexicales, and then it was like campesinos playing their songs for crops and campesinas playing their crops, their alabanzas for birth of their children. And so for the first time we realized there's more to danza than jumping up and down. There's more to danza than feathers. It's a whole ritual. It's like an iceberg. Here's danza, and here's what we see: plumas, tambores, people jumping up and down. And then we went to Teotihuacan for the inauguration. And it was packed with Mexicanos and Chicanos. My family was there from Mexico City, and the people in Mexico couldn't understand. ¿Y esos por qué andan brincando como encorados? Y no hablan español. And it was just like they couldn't understand why we were on the pyramid of the moon praying and doing ceremonies and stuff. And that was the beginning for us as Chicanos. When we came back, it was like, oh my God, it's so close, but why? How will we learn it? And then one day, I went to Andres, it was Juan Felipe's house at that time. And he said, hay alguien que conozcas. And then, it's raining, it's cold, I'm depressed, I don't go. So I went, and there was a little room, dark, and there was little chairs like this, and 6 guys sitting there like this in the dark, and Juan said, ¿por qué no prenden la luz? And he turned the lights on, and there it was, Florencio Yescas and 5 teenagers from La Copa. And he said, soy Florencio Yescas, y estos son mis muchachos, Esplendor Azteca. And that was the beginning of our thread, because through him, we met people like Jaime, we met people like Moises, we met Rosita, we met Pedro, all of these jefes that came, and at that time they didn't come to sell us anything. They came because they wanted to teach us. Oh, ¿quieren bailar? Pues mira, así se hace la cruz. Bueno, pues esa señora lo hace diferente porque son de los volcanes. We're from here, and we do it this way. And all of a sudden we realized that we Chicanos had the luxury of getting the best of all the grupos. There are some grupos that are very traditional, very ancient, but they're severe alcoholics. And we're not going to offer that just because that group is 100 years old. It's like, no, we don't, no drugs, no alcohol. If you can't respect that, then it is yours. So we began to change that because people would come from Mexico and say, yo quisiera que mi papá hiciera las relaciones de él como de ustedes. Nadie toma aquí, nadie, no, aquí no. Ya después, quieres ponerte pedo en tu casa, eres Dios. Pero aquí no. And so little by little, that's been coming around where we see people in Mexico saying no drugs or alcohol. That would have never happened. Because in our tradition, the elders were the only ones that had the right to get drunk, because they had lived for so long and they had battled in wars and giving life to babies. So they could get drunk all they wanted. But young, you would get stoned and dead instantly because it was not allowed. So in the danza, all of these things have been there hiding for us. And it's taken, like you said, the scholarship between Chicanos and Mexicanos. There's a man named, what's Fabian's name? Fabian Frias, an excellent researcher for the danza. And then there's a whole bunch of other people. So I encourage us as Chicanos who have the luxury, social capital to go to libraries and get books and go to Mexico and do it, because if we don't do it, some new age hippie's going to do it and say that the aliens came and taught us everything. Yeah. And then our kids will believe it. Thank you.
Yeah. Aguilar, here in the room. I wanted to contribute. So just a little bit about my background. I'm a trained linguist. Much of my work has been on linguistics, on the documentation of indigenous languages. And I have been feeling that responsibility that Ernesto was talking about, of being in that position of being a researcher, being a scholar, to start to write about La Danza from my perspective, from my lived experience, from our little corner of California in San Diego. But one of the things that I struggle with is that danza is so personal, right? It's so personal, and so writing about it has been a real exercise in sort of being in multiple roles, right? Writing about something so very personal, writing about things that you wonder, should I be sharing this in academic circles or not? And then at the other side, being the scholar and thinking critically about the lived experiences. And so my contribution to this book was really my first real exploration of writing about danza from an academic perspective, outside of presenting at Knox last year. That was my real first one. But the contribution that I wanted to offer was extremely personal. So starting with the very personal, and this was sort of using the Gloria Saldua's autohistoria sort of approach of telling my own history about historical events to sort of tell another history, right? In this case, tell the story of Rosita Hernandez Maya, who was born in January 20th, 1940, and this is the dato that I need to make sure I had, and who passed away in May 14th of 2024. Now, the reason that I wanted to write about Rosita Maya was for a number of reasons. First, in the danza, she was like my abuelita de la danza, or my tia, my older tia de la danza, and that she was somebody who would come annually for years to our ceremony, and she would stay at the house for a week, a month, longer at a time, multiple times throughout the year on her annual trips to California and then back to Mexico. She would come to our ceremony. Back then it was for Chicano Park Day in April, and she would return to Mexico in time for Chalma every year. She never missed Chalma. And so she was somebody that my dad mentioned as being introduced to, or that we were introduced to through Florencio Yescas. And among the many teachers, I've had many teachers in la danza. One of them is here in the room, besides my parents, is Jaime Ayala, who I've learned a lot from over the years. But in terms of the foundation of our group, the formation of how we do things as Danza Mexicayo, there were two real major influences on our group in terms of the founding, and that was Rosita Maya and Don Pedro Rodriguez. And so those two individuals really helped us in San Diego, at least from my perspective, watching my parents, as a child, help us establish how ceremony would function for us as danzantes in San Diego, establishing things that I didn't realize until I was older, were things that in many ways they were telling us how danza used to be, not how danza was actually practiced anymore. And so I wanted to, in this piece, document a little bit about that. Not everything, because there are things that I'm not necessarily publishing to the rest of the world, but establishing and remembering her as an important influence on the dance in the U.S. In the later half of her trajectory in the United States, there was a period of time where she didn't have the visa to come across anymore. And so there was a whole generation of danzantes in the US that didn't get to know Rosita, didn't even meet her, didn't even realize that she had such a pivotal role in the danza in the United States. So she was somebody who was in some ways controversial in Mexico, not always respected. And I think a lot of that was the fact that she marched to the beat of her own drum. She was rebellious. She navigated the patriarchy in the danza, the machismo in the danza, and still did what she wanted to do, and a lot of times was disrespected for that. And I remember that experience of being, knowing her as this jefa that we always respected when she was here, and going to dance and being, for the first time as a teenager, aware of how little she was paid attention to in Mexico, right? That she was, I think in one of the ceremonies, they didn't even give her a palabra, which is one of those sacred speeches at the end of the ceremonial word at the end of the ceremony. And I was taken aback by wow, they didn't even give Jefa Rosita a palabra, right? And so I thought it was really important to write my history with Rosita and how I saw her influence on the danza. And there was one of the principal ways that she really influenced my development as a danzante, and I think our group's development, was she did teach us danzas, and she taught us, the certain parts of the ceremony, but really the spirituality of the ceremony was one of her real important contributions to our understanding of the danza. The importance of the velación, the songs, how she played her concha, and she was never away from her concha. She never left her concha, her guitar, ever. It was always with her. And her estandarte. Those two things she traveled the world with everywhere she went. So that was really important. And the concha itself is just an example. That piece I do write about in this draft, at least. Her use of the concha itself was a sign of her rebellion. She talked about how her father did not want her to play the guitarra. Before, and I think Jaime can attest to this, in the old ways, the instruments and the danza was even more gendered than it is today. And so stringed instruments like the concha were for men, and men only. And sonajas were definitely not for men, and sonajas were for women, right? And so Rosita talks about how her father did not want her to play. And she said, I'm going to play my guitar. And she just grabbed one and started playing it. And so the fact that, from a young age, as a teenager, she pushed back on those patriarchal structures in the danza and said, no, yo soy conchera y yo puedo tocar. that was, just an example of who she was as an individual. And so another piece that I tried to share in this, and it was something that actually came to me the first time I went to Knox. And I was coming to Knox having been to many academic conferences, but more in the field of linguistics, and experiencing, number one, the beauty of being in a space with all these, Chicana intellectuals in one space was like amazing, this amazing experience. But also realizing how much danza, spirituality, that approaches to understanding a Chicano spirituality, how much that had been impacted by danza in a way that I hadn't realized, because most of the time I'm moving in circles of danzantes or non-danzantes, right? But sort of non-danzantes in academic white spaces, right? Where there isn't that, the spirituality of life, of daily living, isn't a part of those academic conversations. And coming to Knox and seeing how much people opened with words that reminded me of palabra. How there were folks who set up altares, for talks, with elements like the four directions in corn colors, right? With opening with smudging, with smoke, and I was just blown away, right? And then the thought that I had that came to mind is that probably some of these folks are involved in danza, but probably a lot of them are not. And there has been this development of a Chicano spirituality, a Chicano indigenous spirituality, that regardless of whether people realize it or not, has probably been profoundly influenced by a danza spirituality, right? And then thinking about that, being like, and those people have no idea how much folks like Rosita and Don Pedro and others had on the establishment of that spirituality. And so I venture a little bit into that conversation and thinking about, in the writing in this chapter. And so, in the later part of going back to Jefa Rosita and my testimonio about her, in the later half of her life, we saw her less. We saw her a lot less than we did in my early formative years of life as a danzante. But even then, we were learning from Rosita. And I start the chapter by talking about how we had gone to Chalma to dance and hoping we would see Rosita. And it turns out, no, she was too sick. And in fact, she passed away. We didn't realize she was that unwell. And going through that, even at that time, danza's old in the United States, but also new, where we've only started to lose jefes, right, in the recent, 10, 15, maybe less than that, 10 years or so. And so while other aspects of the danza are sort of fully ingrained in our community of danza, all of the rituals that go with sending someone off in the traditional way, those are newer for us, since we're now reaching a cycle of, now the danza's been here over 52 years. And so Rosita, in her death, was still teaching us. Having to leave our estandarte with her and with her cruz for the 9 days, and having to come back to Mexico City. All of these different traditions that she was still teaching us in her way after she passed. Again, one of my profoundly influencing teachers in my lifetime. And that's not to say that there weren't moments of rifts and things like that, because that is the nature of human relationships, right? They have their ups and their downs. But in terms of her impact on my development as a danzante, how I see the danza, the sort of animacy, the life given to the things that we have in the danza, was something really influenced by Rosita. So, and I'll stop talking because I can go on.
I have a small poetry collection coming out in the fall 2026 called My God is Brown, Poems of Body and Land. ¿Qué más? It's good to see old faces, new friends, old friends. I have some experience with Danza Azteca in Northern Cali and with Marion B and my extended family in Denver with Carlos and their group out there. So yeah, I just wanted to honor some of them and just share a little bit about danza, writing about danza. And so, but first I do want to thank Jenny Luna, because in those crazy years of being a first generation Chicana student in the university, it's like you're lost a lot of the times. You're not given the mentorship. And so in a scurry to finish my dissertation on danza azteca and other cultural politics, I found your dissertation, and I think Mario had just finished his. So there wasn't a lot of work out there in like the 2010s, and I had finished my dissertation in 2014. So Jenny gave me some beautiful feedback, and up until that point, my work had been pretty much seen as irrelevant in the university within ethnic studies, with brown-facing, folks teaching Chicano studies, pretending to be Chicano or Latino or whatever, and telling me my work wasn't good enough. So Jenny Luna was one of the first people to say, this work is valid, and give me some really good feedback. I owe you a thank you card after so many years, and so thank you for that. So I do want to read a little bit of the chapter that I did write for the anthology. So I get a random email from Jenny and Ernesto, hey, you should submit to this anthology. So thank you, because I would have missed the call. So I was just super excited and sent it off to a couple people, posted my little social media. So, ancestral blueprints, decolonial rites of passage, positionality, moving our way forward. In 2014, I completed my dissertation on danza azteca, where I took a community-centered approach to documenting a traditional practice that had long been understudied and misunderstood. My goal was to uplift the micro-histories and lived experiences embedded in the dance form, especially as it was practiced throughout the Southwest. I had the honor of engaging conversation with danza teachers, leaders, and participants across each generation, carrying stories, teachings, and protocols that rarely make their way in academic archives. My research was met with resistance within the Ethnic Studies Department at UCSD. Danza Azteca was dismissed as not being academic enough, as though ancestral knowledge, spiritual expression, embodied resistance weren't legitimate sites of scholarly inquiry. After I finished my dissertation, the chair of my committee told me, without hesitation, that my work was an embarrassment to the world. That experience was not only shocking for its blatant racism, but also because it was an intentional attempt to silence this tradition and to shame me as an indigenous Chicana for valuing knowledge outside of Eurocentric perspectives. I now understand that the problem was never my topic. It was the institution's refusal to see our ways of knowing as a form of knowledge production. Ceremony, I came to understand, is both memory and map, a way of remembering our native ancestors while envisioning liberated futures. Through practices like Xilonen, we resist colonial forgetting and reassert our belonging to ancestral lineages and community-centered rites of passage. So I started from that experience, like, was danza worthy enough to document, to write about? And so when I got the email, I kind of wanted to be lazy and say, I'm gonna submit something I've already written, or I have in the back somewhere, or look at a chapter in the dissertation. But true to my spirit, I was like, no, I'm gonna write something new. And then y'all gave me that deadline, and I didn't know we could pass the deadline. So I spent that summer working really hard, but I wanted to push the boundaries of danza. would it just be more micro histories or more decentering, like the academy, or which I have done some of that work in the dissertation. So I just, for like weeks, I was stewing. I was like, maybe I'm not even going to apply. They're not going to accept it. And I started thinking about Xilonen. And I work with a lot of indigenous Chicano Latino students, non-white passing brown students at the community college. And every time I teach on the Xilonen, they're very excited. Their eyes light up. They're like, what's that? How do you say that? And that always strikes a chord with young people. And I think over the years, working with them, asking them questions, it's because it's the first time they see themselves represented and just being brown and proud. Having that space, that communal space. And so I just found the Xilonen to be an incredible example or blueprint for even people outside of Danza Azteca. Because not everybody wants to be a danzante, right? And there are many ways to engage with danza and many ways to be a danzante. And sometimes those spaces aren't healthy or safe, or there's a lot of toxic leadership and behaviors, right? So some people will be like, when we talk about or we're in danza, they have those critiques. So I did see the Xilonen as this framework to reclaim rites of passage outside of danza, right? So seeing this beautiful coming together of honoring young women, various ages, in different parts of the United States, in Sacramento, in Los Angeles, San Diego, Denver. So what would it look like if as a community we began to reclaim more of those rites of passage? So from the cradle to the grave, right? And so then I began to just kind of like fixate on how do we bring community together for healing, for communication, and for celebration. So how do brown people, how do they get to celebrate and experience joy without the drama, without the trauma, right? And so Xilonen gives us that framework of how community can come together to honor, to eat. And then I just began to think that, the circle, that is our oldest ceremony. It doesn't cost money to sit in a circle, to share food, to give life advice, to listen to somebody, and have that kindness, right? Because we could be very performative, but where's the integrity and the dignity? And it's not just of reclaiming, but we are those people, right? And so my chapter is a call to reinstate all that in our own communities, in our homes, in our backyards, in our parks, and to liberate all these spaces, right? To have individual rites of passage, romantic partnerships, rites of passage. So I have a whole list in that chapter, and I just really appreciated the goal of the anthology and the different perspectives around danza and how that even applies outside of the danza framework, right? And so, yeah, I hope that you all support the anthology and that we have more, and that our work continues to grow. And the impact of danza on Chicano, indigenous, native spirituality, has seeped in so many facets of our lives, right? And so it is my goal to restore some of those rites of passage. So thank you for listening. I know we'll have an open conversation in a little bit, so look forward to our conversation and engagement. So muchas gracias, Tazo Kamati. Thank you.
Mi
Niahuen, Oman, Natal, Jessica, Marita Gutierrez Massini, Ne Hiwikau, Ne Hiwikau, Moreno Valley na, Pen Ne Puleve, Orange na. Hello everyone, I just introduced myself in the Kauai language. I myself am not Kauai, but it is the lands that I live and work virtually on. Out in Riverside, Moreno Valley, and I did have the opportunity to learn the language as a grad student. So I do practice and bring it everywhere I go, and do also recognize, I'm a guest now on Chumash lands here. I'm sorry, take a breath. I'm just gonna give a little bit about me. I come from the discipline of music, also called ethnomusicology, which is basically studying music and culture and why music is important to people. I was a marching band kid and always was around like community music making and having that be a part of your identity. Fast forward to going to undergrad at UC Davis for music and learning about powwows, and then going to our powwow and then seeing danza there, and no one said that there was going to be danzantes at a powwow. And so ever since around 2014, I've been like, why is no one talking about danza in these powwow spaces? And so me as a music scholar, I'm trying to bring the danza world, talking with the powwow studies world and getting them in conversation, because like for the last, at least, the 90s, they've been going to powwows and being in these spaces and, doing all this work with, transnational, intertribal solidarity and reparations from some of the tensions from, the civil rights movement when AIM was against the Chicano, we were kind of pitted against each other. So, yeah, and I also am an adopted person. My parents are from Mexico. But I was adopted and raised by an Italian American woman. So I've also kind of been navigating, who I am as a person, and, always been called Chicana, but then also not really feeling like I fit in Chicana Latino spaces and more fitting in Native spaces. So yeah, navigating what those two spaces are, why is there some division sometimes, how are we growing and together in these areas? So that's kind of like where I come from. I feel like I look at the margins of spaces, like even the powwow world. I look at danza, who no one talks about, and I also look at Two-Spirit, or if you don't know, it's those who identify as LGBTQIA plus and indigenous, so it's a intersectional identity there. I guess back to my chapter. I kind of mixed a bit of previous writing in my dissertation. There's a third chapter that I bring together several women who were colleagues of mine. It's really awkward to do a dissertation research and ask people like, hey, can you sign this IRB form and sit down for an interview? So I ended up just, after doing powwows and making friends in danza and powwow spaces for 5 years, I was like, hey, you mind having a conversation with me for my dissertation? And they ended up being like talking circles. So that's how I do my research, is really trying to get people together, and kind of like what Jenny and Nestor are doing, like just getting people together, talking to one another, sharing, everyone a little bit of their point of view. And this chapter was bringing danzantes, Two-Spirit peoples, powwow organizers, first-time powwow goers, and we were really talking about what do you think of danza at the powwow? What is it doing to the space when you have this sort of transnational politics and conversations happening? What changes when you have danzantes in grand entry, which is like the formal beginning of a powwow, versus when they're not allowed at the grand entry and you're like, no, you're only here for dinner entertainment, and then you go home. So I look at all of that. I try, to center women. So I really appreciate Andre's chapter on Rosalina, because I thought it was really important to start with a quote from, Valencia. I can't remember her name, but she starts with describing danza as like a spark in the United States, and this is an interview in the 90s. And I'm thinking, oh, we're beyond a spark now. I think we're more like a sprout. So I really, consider a fire. Fire. She says it's a fire. And I say, I guess I was thinking more of like plants. I was thinking, how there's a saying, they thought they buried us, but we were seeds. And so I'm thinking, oh, we're beyond the seeds now. We are now sprouts. I think that's what I'm trying to establish in my chapter, is that, there is this beautiful blossoming happening, and that word blossoming and sort of that sprouting metaphor comes from a colleague, Ishli Arteaga, who described when we talked about Danza and her experience. She's like, it's a blossoming moment, to come together. And it just that's the metaphor I try to embody, and even the way I structure my chapter, I try to do it as a talking circle. So if you don't know, talking circles start with some sort of offering or introductions, and so I do offer a poem in the beginning. I try to write about the danza de permiso, this dance that we do every single time. And I wrote it out as a poem. And that is how I started the talking circle. And I started this chapter as an offering. At the talking circle, I actually did the danza dance. I didn't have the poem, but now it's a poem. And then we do introductions, and then we offer, points of view on danza and powwow experiences. We talk about exclusions in the powwow space because of being a queer two-spirit person sometimes. But also seeing, I noticed this moment of, there's a Danzante, Ishli Arteaga, and a powwow princess, very prominent figure in the powwow world in Southern California, and they call each other as cousins. They call each other as family. And I thought how, this is an example of the sprout. We are no longer divided and seeing oh, no, you're not native. Danzantes aren't seen as so much as wannabe pretend Indians anymore. I mean, yes, there's still sometimes that sentiment, but there is, also hope. I see that hope in that relationship there. And yeah, they say they see each other as more family than they do their blood relatives, because they see each other every weekend. They're both the families of vendors. And if you know the Danza trail or powwow trails, you're often seeing folks together. And yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do, is just give a little snapshot of what is happening. And I really thank the editors for giving me the opportunity, because I feel like when y'all are talking about supporting the generation, I'm just oh, thank gosh, because I don't know what I'm doing, or I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and it still gives me starstruck or nervousness when people say they're reading my work. So thank you for supporting me being out there, and I know it's a vulnerable experience, and to have it with all of you and is great. And I also want to say I had to create a term, detribalized accomplice, to describe myself, because I had to, in my music department, I could not call myself indigenous. They were really pushing back against that Chicana indigeneity, and just to hear that in this space, and I think I was starting to cry just because we can say that out in the open, is really a beautiful thing. And so I'm working on trying to understand and reconnect to my indigeneity in a good way, not trying to say I'm indigenous and we're all mestizos and trying to leave it at that. Really trying to understand my family's lineage. And yeah. Okay. I feel like I'm rambling. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It only came to buy and sell trajes and leave. So this is very important, at least for me, because this is why I dance. Because I'm proud of being an indigenous man and a Chicano. That's and then this is where the big difference too is. En Mexico no es muy raro que se baila para protesta, para motines, para whatever. Here, that's part and parcel of being a danzante, is we're going to speak for our people who cannot speak, and that's why There's me, there's Guillermo Roset, Tupac, en paz descanse. San Isidro, Lord. Yeah, Alurista.
You have to tell them about that one.
Oh, about which one? ¿Cuál de todo?
About this. Where this was. What
Okay.
it,
This was Servidores del Árbol de la Vida. And we started in 1970 as the Centro Cultural de la Raza, but then it kind of went different ways. And we stayed Servidores del Árbol de la Vida. Does that make sense? And so this is Alurista, Beto Urista, David Salcedo, me, and Juan Felipe Herrera. And this is us dancing right at the front of that. And all my family from Mexico City was up here because they heard we were going to be there. So, ya llegó Mayito. I hate that name. But
it was
for
an
them,
opening ceremony.
yeah, but for them it was a shock to see Chicanos getting support from the Partido Trabajador Socialistas for this. You know, it was like, my primo is like indio almost. It took them a while. ¿Y por qué bailas? Ya te dije.
And this is Tajín, right?
Yes, it's Tajín. And I was telling a young man that was in here, this is 1974. This is a full pyramid, this is a full pyramid, and up here there's a full pyramid, but in those days it was covered because the Mexican government didn't have money. But now you go there and it's like, sheesh, what happened to those pyramids? They're like amazing.
And Kathy and Cesar got one.
Yeah, over here by the river, and everybody was running around naked with the water. They put up a fake jet plane body on Lettuce Street, and then they had people sitting there, and you could see them through a window. And then we would come out in a big procession dancing, and then we go around the airplane, and then they go, Western Airlines, the only way to fly to Mexico. And we had to do that like 20 times again. Cut! Let's do it again. That's how I look at my face.
Oh, that's
I'm gonna put a mic on.
Again. And this is at Chicano Park, 1978. The last time Florencio came to Chicano Park.
Mario, can I put a mic on you? So
Sí.
can
And here's the only people left is Guillermo Roset and myself. Asleca passed away.
Guillermo, wow.
Tupac passed away. Felipe passed away. Florencio passed away. So this was 1978 outside Chicano Park. And these are just performances we did. And this is I had a really good friend named Memo Cavada, and he said, I'll take pictures of you guys, I'll do this. And so he's the guy, bring somebody for the middle. So there's me, there's Pedro, there's Chuy, and Florencio. And then this is in Chalma, 82. This is Mario. Andres. Andres! Is this Mario or Pepe?
Mario.
Oh, Mario, my tocayo. He passed away from COVID. Rosita's mom, she passed away years ago, and then myself. And then I love it. They always have a chango or a gorilla. We used to have one of my sargentos, but it was too hot for him. He said, I'm going to pass out. Then again, the great elders, Rosita, Maya, Macui, Jose Gordo. Bien jovencita, ¿verdad? And this was our group in 1982 when we first got the group together. And then in 2017, when Florencio died, we dressed as concheros in his honor. It was a disaster, but we did it. So, I don't know what else to tell you. Anything you want to ask about here?
I gotta send a message to my students.
Here's my ahijado Rolando. Be at the border.
Oh, it's right.
Yeah. And then when we got a grant for our 3 groups in the Mesa, Michicayo, Tonantzin, and Calpuli, and we made one of those. Well, I made. It took me forever to pull everybody out of the pictures and stick them on there. Es our mesa del Señor de los Danzantes. So, and over here, it's just this altar. This is where we put our altar at Chicano Park. And then there's Andres putting the cucharilla, cutting it up, and then after we finish the velación.
Regarding that, what is that design?
¿Cuál?
It's significant.
Es una cruz. Es una cruz, pero una vez más tenemos las 8 direcciones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 y luego aquí es el tiempo. Aquí está otra cruz, esas ofrendas de comida, de tabaco y de copal. Oops, sorry.
Diles qué es la diferencia de la cuchería y las flores.
Oh, la cuchería right here is a cactus that grows really big that we can see right there. My son's cutting them apart. And these will stay like this for days and days and days. Y las flores pues se secan rápidamente. But these represent raindrops. Because where the cuchería grows, there's not much rain. So for them to get rain is something beautiful. So it reflects it in the leaves.
And those only grow in certain areas?
They grow from Central California to Guatemala. Pero hay diferentes variedades. Esta es de Texas, porque aquí no se consigue la que hay en México. La de México es color gris, azul, verde, y esta es verde. Entonces sabemos cuando aquí se ve el color.
What is it like? What is it called again?
It's called giant Thevetia, or spoon plant.
Spoon plant.
Because they look like spoons.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then the rosemary, of course. No, no, especially when they're ripped in half.
Take a quick little break to
Sure.
take a group picture.
Sure.
And then continue.
Sure.
Some folk have. So, Austin, go ahead and take a picture first.
Rodriguez, our maestro from Azochiapan, from the mesa del Señor de los, perdón, la mesa del Señor de, my mind went blank, del Niño de Atocha, Santo Niño de Atocha. And that's Andres at the park, Chicano Park.
For those that don't know why the Niño de Atocha is important to
Okay.
Danzantes, because I know that they celebrate it here in Santa Paula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 1920s, there was a group, Ernesto Ortiz, Pedro, Doña Teresa, and they started a group under the palabra del Señor El Niño de Atocha, because in Mexico all the groups have to be under a Christian saint. And so they had to bathe this, that, and the other, and they said, Señor Niño de Atocha, because he's like represents a hicat, because he goes into prisons and saves people, takes money and food to people, and so they said he's like a hicat, always going around in circles. And so that's their group. And when he came here to start teaching, they had a really hard time. They would not go under a Catholic saint. And he said, well, if you don't want to, that's fine, I'm going home. Because this has to be this way. This is the tradition. You guys don't have it, that's your problem. And so they accepted it. And now there's all kinds of Santo Niño de Atocha's groups.
Right. Explain for those that don't know, because I've heard the concept of how deities and santos, how they're interrelated.
Right.
Specifically with the way that we were able to preserve our indigenous ways, but through and surviving Catholicism by intermixing.
Right.
Explain that a little bit, please.
Well, like if you see right there, that cruz, one of the things I asked, good to see you. Come by the house, come spend a couple days with us. You see this cross? This cross right here is a Christian cross, but it, like I said, it has the 8 directions and everything. Right. So for us, it was not being devious. We're not pretending we're Christian and we're not going to do this. We're saying, yeah, we're Christian and we have a cruz and everything, but it's also our cross for 500 years. It's been our tradition. You know, they don't do this in the church. They do it outside as decorations, but this is purely pre-Columbian ceremony that we now have over here with our drums, and there's the bee making my mastla, and our grandson playing. We played a program with the San Diego Symphony, and it had aztecas and cumbias, and we came out, and my grandson saw me playing the caracol. He wanted to play, and these are the huesos that Andres was talking about that became part of our repertoire, but not until the 40s.
And those are shells.
Yeah, the chachayo's outer shells.
Shells of what kind of and they have seeds in them.
Yeah, they're very poisonous. They're called Thevetia, Thevetia, and that's a whole family, and there's a whole bunch of them in Mexico. And I don't remember the name of the one that's specifically this one, but they grow in Mexico everywhere. And
Why were those chosen as far as part of the official traje?
because as Andres was saying, the jefe was fixing his huesos, and he kept pulling out the seeds, the pulp inside, and the chickens were coming up and eating that, and then about half hour later, there's like 30 dead chickens. And they go, oh my God. But then he realized that, wow, these make nice sound. And then if you put a little shot, you can see right here. Can you see that one right there, a little silver in this corner?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are shotgun pellets, and that makes it sound even louder. But it makes it...
Oh, they put them inside?
Yeah, but it makes it harder because you got to cut it and just barely open it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it'll pop out.
Right. And so they do it just enough to pop it in and they won't pop out. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And then this one is, I was teaching danza up in the Teatro Esperanza up in Fullerton. And this was like in 76. My traje, what's left of my traje. The rest got stolen. Yeah, the top and the bottom got stolen. I only got left with the rodilleras and the casaletes.
How did it, let's just say, get missed? How did it end up in other places?
Because I lent it to a mechista who was going to be Cuauhtemoc, and then he got drunk and lost the rest.
Yeah, got it. It happens.
And so we got a grant to bring our friends that you'll see over here to San Diego. And there was the Paguari, Hopi, Comanche, Yoremi, and did I say Apache already? Yeah. Uh-huh. And so we danced in Balboa Park, and we danced in the barrio so that people could see our traditions, how we're similar, how we're different, but we're related.
Please speak more on that, because I think that the public needs to know more about cross-border Turtle Island, the fact that we've been migrating since the beginning of time, and how we've been interrelating as indigenous people constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we don't understand that concept, that there is no just Native American in one area.
Right. The thing about borders is that borders imply that you have eternal rights to a land, and you don't, because once you're dead, where are you? You're not here. So for us, it's always been that our people have moved up and down our genetic code, our traditions, our food, everything. So for us to be like, no, you can't be here, get out of here, is to reject ourselves. Because hate is the opposite of pride and love. So that's why we did this, so that our gente who never goes to New Mexico or to a powwow could see this and go, oh, that's related to what we do, what you guys do. So over here, this is my favorite part.
Yes.
Because in one of the groups that was over there, the Conrado Anaya group, they had been coming to the Gallup Intertribal for 20, 30 years. But then they started raising their prices. And then one day they did a really bad thing. And they ripped off the people. So they called a friend of mine and said, do you know any Aztec dancers? We need them. She said, well, yeah, I know one, Mario Aguilar. And so they called me. Andres was 11 months old. And we went and we danced, and here we are. There's me, there's B, there's Maria, Tere, Felipe, Coco, Rolando. He was 10 years older. And so these are all our kids. These are our kids, little tiny mites. And then every single group is here, Mezcalero Apache, Taos Pueblo, Hopi. And this was photographed by a photographer who had a special camera that he used for National Geographic. And this was supposed to come out in National Geographic, but it didn't. It didn't. But we got a couple of them and we put it up on
Do you have a scan of this?
Actually, yes.
Maybe I could get it later, put it in the video. So we
Yeah.
get the details.
Yeah, I don't know how good I'll show it
If
to
it's a
you.
scan, yeah, no, it's good enough. It's
Yeah.
good enough.
And so when we started going, we started making friends with our Pima friends, Taos, Hopi, Comanches. So let me see, right here, this is Gallup. This is our dancers. And then the Kiowa dancers, they always want to hit up my daughter. Hey, let's take a picture with her. And then over here, Andres and B with one of our Zuni Oya maiden friends. And then this guy was a really famous flute player. And then my mind just went blank.
It's okay. He was a famous flute
Andres, or B. His name, I forgot his name. Robert Tricotti. He passed away. He took a good, what do you call it?
He's a board dancer.
He's a,
I think it was more like a traditional dancer. But one year he had a lot of political things
yeah,
to say,
and they were called
the
him
Native
back.
Americans fall on both sides of it, right? So some people didn't like it. I liked it. I said,
Yeah, he told them, you guys better watch out because these white people that are around here are taking everything and you're going to be left with nothing. And he said, you might not invite me back next year, and they didn't. He goes, but I need to speak.
and look, there we are. That's me and my son is
Oya Maiden,
Corliss.
Corliss.
She's a Zuni Oya.
And up there we have
Those are real Oyas.
our Laguna,
My father brave.
these guys are Laguna godchildren. They got married at Chicano Park. That was another.
She's Laguna and he's actually
Hemes.
And they wanted to have their ceremony at Chicago Park.
See, so for us, it's like we're conquering, conquistando.
So tell me about this picture because
This
I
one?
actually found a photo of this type of style in a magazine, like a 1960s magazine, and I had no reference of what tribe they were or.
These are the Apache.
Apache crown.
Wow.
They dance the crown dances for young women's maturing ceremony.
Yeah.
And these guys always wanted to hang out together.
They look pretty like they're.
But once they put their thing on the top, they can't talk to anybody.
Let's say that again.
So once they put their traje on the head, they can't talk to anybody. They can't.
They become spirit. They can
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
persons.
You have to be way up there on the top of the hill. And that's it.
Which can be seen as, oh, why are they over there trying to be different?
Oh, this is our patron saint.
Protecting their tradition.
We went with, it says, Mexicayo Toteo Centilistli means unidad, sacred unity. And we did that because for us, from the very, very beginning, our focus was family. So, a lot of groups, they start with 10 guys or 6 girls, and they're out there marching and dancing and partying and stuff. And we wanted our kids next to us. So as you can see right here, all these kids this guy started when he was 9, now he's like 57. And, it's just,
Generational.
yeah. So we tell people, it's sacred. It's sacred in one way, it's sacred in another way, and that makes it all sacred. There's unity.
Is there any question you want to ask them while we have them on camera? Maybe you could share something that the public should know that you feel you would like to express.
I feel like there's a generational attitudes on if you're a Danzante who is like maybe had to move and trying to find another group, and do you have any advice on like in transition going from one
Traditional
group to another?
way.
Yeah, what is
They
the
have,
traditional?
everything is covered in la danza. You go to you look around, you see, I like that group. I might want to dance with them, but I'm in this group. This is what you do. You go to your jefe and you say, Jefe, I'm really interested in growing my danza, and I would like to have your permission to go dance with this group. And if he or she is anything of a jefe, they'll say, of course, that's how you grow. And when you come back, if you want to come back, you're welcome. Others will say, fuck you can't come back, you ain't shit. And I've seen that, and it's like, then you take your letter to the new jefe and say, jefe, le pedí permiso a mi jefe que podía venir a danzar con usted, aquí está la carta. And then they'll tell you, well, yeah, you can only come for practice. You can't perform. No, I don't care. You can only come on Wednesday beginners. You can't come advanced. That's okay, because I don't know you. Once they start seeing you and how committed you are, how respectful you are, and the things you learned from your other jefes, they open up.
Thank you.
Now, the worst thing to do is to go to a group and then start telling them what to do. Oh, we don't do it that way. We do it this way. And the reason we do it this way is like, you could just say, well, we all learn from different things, and our group learned this way. How did you guys learn that way? And so you learn, they learn, and you can go, oh, that makes sense. Let's do it that way. We have to pack. Ahí nos estamos viendo.
Your fiesta.
Okay. Abril y julio.
I don't know about Abril.
Okay.
I have to see what Jaime is doing.
Oh, sí. Yeah.
Something you should share about the public that,
Oh, just the fiestas, the dates of his fiestas.
Oh, a fiesta is, I would have to look, because I'm always 10 years behind. Okay, so, okay, calendar, here we go. No?
Thank you for recording your Spanish version.
Okay, so
Both ways we tried.
Chicano Park is going to be 25, 26.
Of March?
April.
Got it.
And then our ceremony is, over here, 17, 18, 19. So ensayo real, danza, velación, and then danza the next day.
Yeah. Okay, we'll probably be there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Si se puede, si no, ya sabemos.
You know, I follow Jaime wherever he goes.
Yeah. Sometimes that's dangerous. Con permiso.
I want to say one last thing. If you could just, for closing, I'm trying to turn this on. Just say something, I'll ask you. Well, first of all, I wanted to really thank you on behalf of CSEP Podcast, our podcast program that will be airing this online and sharing with Ventura County. Really want to thank you for your dedication in preserving cultural ways that have been connecting us as indigenous people, as indigenous relatives to our communities, and teaching us how to respectfully, treat these dances and to treat each other with respect and dignity. And also, I want you to say, if you can, what you wish for the future generations. How do you want them to remember everything we're doing, and how you want them? What would you ask them if you could ask them anything?
Oh, that's an easy question. I would ask them several things. Number one, go dance in Mexico. If you only dance in the United States, you're not really a danzante chichimeca, because you don't know. It's like I'm going to go to France and eat Chinese food. It's like, what? Go to China. So that's the first thing. If you want to be a danzante, it doesn't matter what
pilgrimage.
Make a pilgrimage to the sacred sites. They have churches on top, so you won't get lost. They have pyramids, so you won't get lost. But go. Second thing is, be respectful of everybody, because we don't know what that person came with. And so we don't want to mess people up just because our ego's pissed off today. And then the last thing would be respect the kids. The children and the elders are the most important sacred things we have. So we respect the kids, have patience with them, and if they don't want to dance right now, that's okay, they'll dance later. I know people that I'm going to beat you if you don't dance. I just tell them, sit in the middle, and when you're ready, you can go up, but you can't go play. You have to sit in the middle. And that's it, just simple.
Perfect. Thank you, Maestro. Thank you so
Karen.
much for everything. And que
Send me a
buena
copy of
salud.
your